Hello, in this video we're going to take a look at a sample solution for the example coding long response problem. So let's just read through it. A hospital database stores information on a collection of patients. One type of information is the name of the patient. The database is populated by taking an input from the user, which is always the patient's first name followed by their last name, separated by a space. That database stores the information in a list after converting the input to the last name followed by the first name, followed by the first initial of the first name. So if our input is Paul Miskew, it's stored as Miskew P. So our input specifications are, we want to write a loop that will take 500 manual inputs for the hospital patients. What we'll do is we'll shrink that down to 5 just to test our code. We'll process each input and store it in a list called patients. After all 500 names are entered, take single input for a last name that you wish to search for. Search the last name that you wish to search the list patients for, and after your search is complete, the user should have the option to search for another name. Note that the input of her name should only occur once. The program should output the number of times that a specific last name is found. So here are some suggested modifications you could do in preparation for the exam. I'm not going to go through those right now. We're just kind of going to work through this one here. So, oh, that's the recorder. Let's go here. Here we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a list called patients, and I'm going to write a loop to take the inputs. And I said 500, but I'm going to actually make a variable called num patient, and we're just going to set that to 5 for now. It's convenient setting a variable at the top because then I can quickly change it in a couple spots. And I'm going to say temp equals input. Please input patient name. And again, this is assuming that it's always first name space last name. And then I'm going to say patients at patients dot. Okay, let me go back here. So now there's two ways to do this. I'm going to show you the easy way that uses this uses a split function, and then I'm going to show you the other way if you don't know the split function. So remember that what the split function does is it splits up a string into a list based on some separating value. And in our case, every input is first name space last name. So if I do something like let's do approach 1. So if I do something like temp list equals temp.split space, and I'm just going to print temp and I'm going to print temp list just so you see this here. So let's just run this through quickly. So please input a patient's name. If I put Paul Miskew, I should spell temp list right. Let's try that again. So I run this again and I come down here and I put Paul Miskew. Notice how it creates, there's my string temp, and here's my list, Paul Miskew. So what I can really quickly do now, this makes it really easy, is I can simply say patients dot append, and I'm going to append temp list at 1 because the second element, which is located at the first index, is always the last name, plus temp list at 0, comma. So take out the string 0. And now let's just print patients every time just so we can see what's happening here. If I run this, so I put Paul Miskew, Miskew P, John Smith, Smith J, Bob Fish, Fish Bob, Frank Reed. So this is the really easy way to do it, and I strongly recommend you get to know this split function. This exists in Java and a couple other languages, and in fact, a lot of AP problems it becomes really useful. But let's imagine you didn't know about the split function. The other way to do it is to take the temp, loop through that string, and find the space. So I'm going to make another loop here for j, and I'm not going to call it I because I'm inside this loop, in range, and I'm going to loop from 0, comma, I'm going to go to the len of temp, basically the length of the string, 1. And I'm going to make some variable called LOC, which I'll set to 0 initially. And essentially I'm going to say if temp at I is equivalent to space, so basically if I found the space, and then I'm going to say LOC is equal to I. So now that I've found that space, it's going to loop through the whole string. I'm going to say patients.append, and let's just kind of do a sample one here so we can see this. If I go Paul Miskew, but let's do a smaller name, Bob Fish. So Bob Fish has indexes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So when I run Bob Fish through this loop, LOC is going to be 3. So if I want to get the last name, I'm going to pull out from 4 to the length of it. So I need to go from LOC plus 1. So I'm going to say temp at LOC plus 1, colon, the end of temp. Now I know you guys know some shorthand notation for this, but I'm going to stick with this two-sided. And then I'm going to say plus temp at 0, which is the first element. And again, let's now print patients, just to make sure this works. And if I run this, please input patient's name, Paul Miskew. Oh, we have a little mistake. What happened there? Let's figure this one out. Did you see my mistake? It's right there. It should be J. I get such in a habit of using I all the time. Now this should work. Input name, Paul Miskew. There we go. How many of you saw that as I was making the mistake? I'm going to keep this in so you see it happens to all of us. So what's my other patient name? John Smith. Other patient name, E.T. Jedi. Jedi E.T. Frank Bob. There we go. Now, I want to really stress the point here that you don't need to error check. You're assuming that this input is the first name space the last name. Error checking becomes a lot trickier. Okay, so now what we can do is we're going to come out of this loop, and now we're going to search for a specific last name. So first thing we have to do is take an input. Last name equals input. What last name are you looking for? And now, once I've taken that input, I'm going to make a counter and set it to 0 because I haven't found any of those. And I'm going to write a standard loop, 0, LE. And let's go, remember we made that variable num patients, comma 1. And all I have to do now is make an if statement. And I'm going to say if patients at I. So that's going to pull out the element, and now I'm going to actually let's make another temp string. So this is going to pull out the string. So again, let's use this Bob Fish example. So Bob Fish now is going to be fish B, which is going to have an index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so I need to compare everything except the last letter. So that's going to go from 0 to the length of the word minus 1. Remember, inclusive, exclusive. So patients, so let's say if temp at 0, len bracket temp minus 1 is equivalent to last name. Oh, this should be L name, pardon me. There we go. CTR equals CTR plus 1. And then I print the last name, L name, appears. I'll put a bracket on this S since it may appear once or multiple times. We're going to cast this to a string times. So now if we run this, Paul Miskew, Bob Fish, Frank Fish, Lisa Jones. Oh, and Emily Smith. Oh, we have a layer. What's our error here? Oh, what? I input it wrong. Let's run this again. Oops. Come down here. Bob fish, Phil fish, Frank fish, Emily Jones, Sarah Smith. What last name are you looking for? Fish. And there it is. Fish appears 3 times. Now the last part of this program is that we want to be able to search multiple times, and it very clearly indicates that you don't want to have to re-input the names. So we're going to set up a while loop, and we're going to make a variable here called again, and we're going to set that to y, and we're going to say while again is equivalent to y, or again is equivalent to capital Y. There's a couple options here. You could check if you have a y or if it's not, So basically, there's a couple ways you could do this. I'm going to assume that we're looking for y, capital Y or small y. So while again is equivalent to small y or it's a capital Y. And then once I print this out, I'm going to say again equals input search again. And then I always like to go to the very end of the program, print end program, so I know when I'm done. So if we run this, let's scroll this up a little bit. I'm going to say Bob Fish, Phil Fish, John Cat, Sarah Tiger, Bob Bear. I'm looking for fish. Fish appears 2 times. Search again? Yes. What name are you looking for? Tiger. Tiger appears 1 time. Search again? Yes. What name are you looking for? Miscue. Miscue appears 0 times. Search again? No. End program. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is an example of how you could respond to the long response question. What I really want to make sure, kind of highlight here, is that this part here where you're doing the string manipulation, this split function becomes really useful. You don't need it, but it's a good one to have in your toolkit. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Have a wonderful day.